All right, so we now live. Got my mic working and my video working. I think we're sorted. Yeah, apologies for last week. I had a bad week and I was very tired and I didn't prepare, so I'm going to try to do a take two. Thanks for those who attended. This week we're going to be talking all about Csrf, Cross-Site Request Forgery, what it is, how an attacker can exploit it, so the different scenarios that an attacker will exploit it, and then some things that you can do to prevent it. So it's a concept that I battled in when I first started off trying to get my head around it. Like, you see this request being done and another request, and you're trying to figure out how it ties in and what does it actually mean. And that's important because that plays into how an attacker actually exploits it. So the whole point around cross-site request forgery is, as the name kind of suggests, it's a request made on another site. So we'll delve into this. So what I have here is two sites. One is like a CMS, and the other is another, call it whatever site, skateboarding site. And the whole point is you will then have the attacker get you to visit another site. They'll either compromise that site or they'll do things like phishing to try to get you to click on the link to go to that site. And then once you're on that site, there's a request made in the back end that's typically hidden. I mean, I guess you don't always have to hide it, but you probably always want to hide it if you want to exploit it. And again, we'll delve into that in a bit. And that request is then made on behalf of the user. So from this site to the other site. So hence a cross-site request, and then the forgery because you're trying to forge that the user submitted that request. And the reason why that works is if you actually have a look at HTTP, HTTP is a stateless protocol. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the protocol itself has no notion of what kind of state a user is in. So when I visit a site, I submit a request. The server gets that request, processes that request, and sends a response. With that request and response, there's nothing to say, well, this is the first time a user's heading inside, or this is a user that hasn't authenticated themselves. So there's no kind of state within the protocol itself. Now, there is slight caveat to this, and there's one way of kind of doing this. Well, there's maybe multiple ways that you could do this. So one, you could maybe associate a request with an IP address. That's not great from a security point of view. IP addresses can be spoofed. And then you also got things like a single IP address being fronted in terms of like a NAT network, which is a network address translation where you can basically have multiple IPs sitting behind one IP address. I won't go into all the networking details. I don't even know all the ins and outs of that. But it's probably like a corporate environment where you've got a single kind of source IP. Or you might even have a proxy as well. So that's not going to really work. So the other way is within HTTP, there's a mechanism called basic authentication. And this was kind of used in the past. Actually built into a browser. So what the browser can do is prompt you for your username and password, and it'll pop up a alert box with fields for you to enter in your username and then your password. And then the browser will take your username, concat it with your password, put in a colon between the two, and then base64 encode that. And then finally, it will send that base64 encoded string in an authorization header. Now, it will do that for every request subsequently until you do things like clear cache and that. So with that, you can't really do things like, how do you log someone out? How do you clear that? What if they change their password? How do you get the new password without them having to clear the cache? And then the other thing is like, how do you get nice login forms like this? It's not really possible. So this is where, hey, Nikos, thanks for joining. So this is where cookies actually come into it. I know those dreadful cookies. Believe it or not, cookies can be a good thing. And this is where it's known as the session cookie. So typically, doesn't always have to be, but most often it's a unique random token. Now, where so it doesn't have to always be, you can use things like JWT, JSON Web Tokens, but certainly in the past, it was a unique string, and you want to make sure that string is unique, hard to guess, because otherwise attackers could then guess that string and then portray themselves to be someone else. So what happens is when you hit a site, you will log in, and then you'll be provided a cookie once you successfully authenticated to that site. Typically, you actually get a cookie before, but you should get a new cookie when you log in. That's the right way of doing it. I won't go into things like session fixation and session hijacking. The general premise, log in, get a cookie. Now, that cookie will be sent with every request that your browser makes to that site that you logged in. And we can show this with this example here. That's great. But it's going to be every single request your browser makes. Now, what you can do with Cross-Site Request Forgery is if the user is within the same browser session, so it doesn't have things like incognito mode open or those like session container things, so like these things. This is why this could potentially be helpful as well. So if they don't have any of that, so in other words, just normal browser with multiple tabs, the browser won't know, and it will just send that cookie along with the request. In the past, it's changing now, and I'll explain why it's changing towards the end when we go over the different scenarios that we can use to kind of mitigate this. But for now, assume that doesn't exist. So it sends it with every request. Now, this means that an attacker could make a request on behind the scenes on the site and then submit those requests on behalf of the user. Because that cookie is then sent, that request will be associated with that user logged in. Now, the only thing you can really do with that, because of other browser limitations, is more modification things. So things like posts or deletes and updates. Get requests, unless it's doing modification, is not going to be very useful. And that's because the browser mechanism in the past, which was known as same site policy, basically, if you used XML HTTP requests, I think I got that right. It's JavaScript to make requests. You could make the request, but you couldn't pass the results. And that, I guess, kind of makes sense. You don't want to make requests on behalf of something else and then be able to pull that data. So I could like suddenly get private information from another site. But you can still submit it in terms of a post request to create something or update something. It changed a few years ago with cross-origin resource sharing, CORS, and this also changed a bit of the way that Csrf also worked. This is important because you may find that sometimes you do Csrf attempts and they just don't work. This is because within CORS, there's something called a pre-flight check. And as part of that, what it does is the browser will send an options request before it even makes the initial request. And then that options request basically checks the CORS kind of permissions that it can get from the server. And that's that whole point of that pre-flight check. Now, this is a problem for Csrf because that will break any sort of Csrf. So if I make a post to something, the browser is going to call options and my Csrf is just not going to work. That's not a security mechanism. Don't rely on that. But that's sometimes what happens. But there is a caveat to that. Pre-flight checks won't happen for what they call simple requests. And I've got to remember, I think we can actually look this up. I think it was like multi-part. It's basically like the content type that you send in. Simple HTTP method or something like that. Yeah, not those. They basic. I forgot. It was one of those two. Cause pre-flight. Is it simple request? Yeah. Yeah, if you have a look here, it'll probably give it to you somewhere. I'm just trying to see if I can find it. There we go. Okay, so yeah, here's the simple requests. So these won't actually trigger the pre-flight. As you see, they don't trigger. So these are the things that you basically need in place in order for you to successfully exploit CSRF. Whether it's possible to do it with the pre-flight, I don't know. I've never been able to. I've been kind of stopped multiple times by the pre-flight when trying to exploit a CSRF vulnerability. But as I said, don't rely on the security mechanism. That's never what it's been intended to. So yeah, but basically all of these things, and it also needs to be, the content type needs to be one of these in order for it to be considered a simple request. So things like application JSON or application XML, you're not going to get it to work. So those are kind of the prerequisites for Cross-Site Request Forgery. And just reading Nico's comment there, causes a pain to implement for local dev environments. Yeah. So causes a whole nother thing. I might do a session on it sometime. It's a pain. The reason why it's painful, like dev environments, often with cores, you can only have one origin. Said you can't have like multiple ones, or you have to do wildcard, and wildcard's bad. So yeah, it's a pain. But we're here to talk about CSRF. So yeah, CSRF is kind of still a thing. It's not as popular as I've seen it in the past, but that's largely due to a browser change, which we'll cover off later. So what I have here is a site. All right, if we go log in, actually, sorry, taking a step back, what I have is this this ISO from a service called VulnHub. They have a whole bunch of ISOs, so covering things from like web apps to like vulnerable servers and all those kinds of things. So have a look on there. There's a whole bunch free to download. You just basically spin up the or import the ISO. Some of them are actual ISOs, some of them are just VM images. You should be able to work it out. And yeah, so I came across this one. This is all CSRF focused, although this app that I'm showing does, I think, have many other vulnerabilities, but we'll just focus on the CSRF. Some of the things that I tried to and that didn't work, so like Bolt didn't work. I think this one also didn't work. So we'll try give a few of them a go and see how it goes. So yeah, this one here is the CSMS, content management system, and username is Victor, password is Victor. So we log in, we get this kind of admin dashboard. Now, when attackers probably looking to exploit CSRF, one of the things they probably go for is if it's a like CMS or some sort of management. So like think of a security management or admin panel, they'll probably go for the user section. The reason being is I can now add users or modify users with the Csrf. So in this case, if we go look at our users, we see there's different users and they have different roles. And the interesting one is admin. So we are Victor, and there's the role admin. So let's just go and test creating a user. So if we call that test, I'm just going to upload this. So upload that, admin, and then the world's strongest password. Okay. So we created that user. So I'm just going to come to burp so we can actually see what happened. Before I do, I also just want to show the cookie. So that's when we hit the site. Actually, CSMS is the root. So we came here and there should be a set cookie somewhere. There we go. So there's that cookie that I was talking about. That's a session cookie. So that's telling the browser this cookie should be used on all resources on CSMS and below. So you'll see every single other request. Subsequently, after that, that cookie is then sent with those requests by the browser. That one's not to that server. So that one there, I don't know why that was not sent. I probably cleared the cache. What we are interested in this one though. So this is a request that we made to create that user. So you can see things like the username, the first name, last name. Here's the image, which is quite large, and then other bits here. Now, what an attacker would need to know is obviously all those fields and the actual URL to call. Basically, be able to replay this request without the cookie. That's the main thing. So let's try that. And I've done that because I did my homework. I've actually prepared. So there's actually two ways that we could do this, but we'll play out the multi-part. Before we do that, one of the things I wasn't too sure of when I first tried this was trying to get the image in. This is going to be a bit tricky. So what I did is you can go to the repeater and let's just take out the image and see if it would still work. So we'll call this test-no image and see if it will still create the user. So we'll go all the way to the bottom. And actually, while I'm here, I also just want to explain this a bit. So this is a multi-part form, and you have a boundary, and the boundary basically separates the different fields. So with like a query parameter or an ordinary post body, the fields are separated with an ampersand. In this case, with a multi-part, because you can do like binary, it's separated with this kind of boundary. And then the last one at the end has a dash to indicate the end. So if we send this off, we get a 200. Okay, great. Now let's actually go see if that user was created, because this 200 just returns this page. Not very useful. And there we go. Okay, so the user's been created and there's no image. So we can create a user without an image. Fantastic. So let's go off and try the exploit. So what I've done here is I'm just going to copy this and put it in here. So this is the index. So when the user visits the site, what's going to happen is behind the scenes, the JavaScript's actually going to load. So I could have put this in a function and use like window.load, onload, and call the function, but I've just put this in here. So when the user's browser hits this, it's actually going to trigger this JavaScript. And it's using an XML HTTP request to actually submit the request. Now, you can actually use probably things like jQuery in that. Sometimes it's better to use this because this is native. So you don't know what the user's browser is going to be like and if they have like things like proxies and all that kind of stuff. So you probably have a higher degree of success if you're just using native JavaScript libraries. The other important thing to call out is this. So this tells the browser to send the cookie with this JavaScript request. So what we could actually do is let's comment it out, and we'll actually see the request being sent without it. So what an attacker would do is get the user to visit their site, like, hey, look, come see cool skateboards or whatever, and away they will go. So I just want to make sure I load this. So you need to make sure you do a hard refresh, because this is a static site, and we can actually view the let's view the page source. Just make sure it is there. There it is there. All right. The other thing we can do is actually view the traffic, which is gone. So let's just submit it again. And there we go. So we've got a 302, right? Now, why is that? Well, let's have a look at that in Burp Suite. But we can see that we've actually made a call to this site here. So let's actually go have a look at Burp Suite and see what happened. So there's that post. And as you can see, it did the post, but it didn't actually send the cookie. So when I sent this request, the server got it and goes, I don't know who you are. And you'll find here it will have a 302, which is a redirect, and there should be a location. So it's redirecting me back to the index page. So if I actually go render this, it should then go back to the index page, which is weird because you got that. Yeah, as I said, like the site's probably prone to a lot of vulnerabilities. But the point is, without that flag being set, the cookie's not sent. So now if we set that and we come back to the site and we do a hard refresh, hopefully this will work. So you'll still see this causes an error, but we now get a 200. Technically, it should be a 201 because 201 means created. But again, the site's probably not the best standards. But you also see something here in terms of same origin resource, same origin policy. And this is moaning because it can't process the response. So if you go actually look at the response, you'll see it returned a HTTP page. Go to Burp. So if we did the post here, it actually returned like a HTML page. Now, if I try to do like watch out for the response, so check the response code and do the response.txt, it would be empty because of cause you can't. The request can't get this response. Now, there is a way with cause to allow for that, but we're not going to focus on that. Now, we've got a 200. That's good because that's different from the 302 that we got before. We can also see we do have the cookie being sent. Now, did that user get created? So in here, I called the user Csrf user, the first name, last name, made them an admin, and all of that stuff. So we should actually even be able to log in as this user. So let's just see if we can do that. So we can also see the user, and there we go. I don't know why there's 3 of them. That's weird. Maybe I accidentally hit refresh too many times. But you can actually see the user being created. So I'm just going to delete some of those because I have no idea how that's going to react with multiple usernames. So if you log in as a Csrf user and log in with the user password, that didn't work. Well, okay. I don't know why I can't log in, but you still see that the user was actually created. That's weird. I can actually log in with that user. Maybe there's some other weird bug somewhere. Actually, I don't know where these other ones are coming from. Wow. This thing is buggy. It was when I was doing tasks last night. So let's just clear that out and try this again. Yeah, that's weird. So there we go. There's that Csrf user. I think the delete's actually not deleting those users. Might be the might actually be the app itself doing some weird stuff. So let's just see. Okay, we'll try log out and we'll try log in as this the Csrf user. I don't know if it's gonna work. Nah, I don't know. Anyway, the main thing is that you actually saw that user being there, and also, actually, can I even log in? Whoa. So interesting. The username is lowercase Victor to log in, and it's uppercase here. And this, what? Yeah, I don't know. Don't ask me about this. All right, let's try and log in as Chucks. So Chucks is the user. So there's one other thing that we could potentially do. Chucks, and I think there's no password. No, I don't know. The site is a bit broken. So that's so as I mentioned, that's where attacker would try target first. Now there is another way that we could actually do that. So you can use a different type. It's the form. So using this XWW form URL encoded. So we can try this now, and this will achieve the same result. It may be a cleaner way. So it's again also going to depend on the server and the request, what it's expecting. Sometimes they'll accept both, or sometimes they'll expect one or the other, or sometimes they'll expect neither. And that's where you got things like application JSON, and that's just not going to work. So let's just differentiate this form. We'll just call this Csrf user form. So we've updated that. So if we come back to this and we refresh the page, should see the same request being made with a 200. And let's just check here. So there's that with a 200. And let's go view the dashboard, the users. And there we go. You can see that user now being added. How you actually modify a user is also interesting. So we could actually modify a user here. Let's just try add. So we'll change this user's password. So there's password. So again, we can see this is the request. It's a post, and we have that added user. So let's change this user, and let's make them an admin. So what we'll do is take this URL. I'm just going to try see if this is going to work with just this. Oh, just that bit there. I'm just going to change with the username. So where's that? We'll just change the username, and we'll change everything else. So this Chucks should have. Let's actually keep it real. So, well, the one thing is you might only know that this username, right? So let's assume that you don't know the username. You might call them Chucks. Let's put like an underscore as their username. We'll change the email address because we don't know it. Checks, and then I think the other thing is update user. Wow. Get myself confused. So that's update user. And is it called create user? Update user. All right. Okay, so if all goes well, we should be able to see this user change. So Chucks, do me proud, Chucks. And then if we refresh this, there we go. They're now admin. Well, a random sort. That's random. And as you can see, we've modified some of the other fields as well. Can we actually even log in as them? Let's try. Is it Chucks and then password? Yeah, we can log in. So we also changed their password. Of course, as I said, the other thing you could do is actually delete. So in this case, there's a delete there. That's probably a post. No. What was that? Oh, there we go. That's a get. Wow. Okay. So in this case, you don't even have to do all of this. You could do something like this. So you could do a really easy hacky way. A really easy way of doing this is using the image tag. So image, because all we have to do is just call this the site here, or this URL with the ID. I've got to remember how to do image tags. It's been so long since I've done image tags. Is there any in here? Okay, yeah. So in that, and you probably put this in the div and hide it away, but we won't in this case. And then we just have to find the user ID. So where's the user ID? 39. There'll probably be some weird things. Nope. And if we've done it correct, we should see, there we go, there's a request being made, and that this user should disappear. There we go. As simple as that. I mean, we could have done it with like XML, HTTP requests and all of that. So you would have changed, you would have basically taken all of that out, change that from a post to a get with, and then the URL, and that's about it. And you wouldn't actually, you just do a send without body. This is just a one line, easy enough. Cool. So that's all well and good, but what does that actually mean in terms of how do you prevent this kind of thing? And this kind of comes with how Csrf has evolved, or protections have evolved. Now, there's different like kind of methods. So there's like the double submit cookie and all that kind of stuff. If you go to OWASP's page, they have like a really verbose thing around the other methods. A lot of them, like double submit cookies, I'm not seeing happen all that often. By far the most common in the past was what's known as anti-Csrf token, and many actual frameworks actually implement this. So things like Spring or Django actually implement this out of the box. What that is if you take a step back and think where the Csrf vulnerability actually comes in, is around data modification. So trying to create something, trying to update something, or trying to delete something. And with those, there's almost guaranteed to be a form of some type. Maybe delete, maybe you could argue against, but certainly creating and updating, there's almost always going to be a form. Okay, maybe update, you might have a drop-down list, but still. And one of the things around that is you can have a token that's sent in the page that actually populates that form. So in this case, we'd have a token, a hidden field, which contains the Csrf token in this page here. So that means when I submit this page, it will submit that token as well, because that's what the browser does with the form. And the server will then get that token. And the server already knows the token is sent, and I can get that token with the request and I match the two and say, yes, this was from the person that I sent it to. An attacker wouldn't have any way of getting access to that token because they could try to call this page, but they won't actually be able to pass the results of this page unless they have cores. And this is where cores can, a misconfigured cores, and this is why misconfigured cores can cause problems. But assuming there's no cores in that enabled, then they won't be able to get that. I don't have this implemented. I'm not going to show you now because it requires server-side changes and all that. But as I said, if you go look at modern frameworks, so Spring, Django, those types of things, they have it all inbuilt, and you'll see will either be sent as like a CSRF token or something. Sometimes I also send it in the header. Again, with cores and that, you can't pass those headers. You can only get things like status code. So that's another way they also send it. Send it in the header, use some JavaScript to pull it out and put it in a hidden form field. That's probably the most common way that was done in the past. Now, the newer way, and it may or may not always work, so these tokens are still going to be around, is the same site cookie. This is a fairly new flag on cookies, and this defines where a cookie can and can't, shouldn't be sent. So in the past, basically, cookies were sent with every request. If you go look at cookies, there's basically two ways. There's a few flags, right? So is there a way to see all the flags on the cookie? Yeah. So there's a few flags. Expires, max age, those are to do with the lifetime of the cookie. But the interesting ones are domain. So the domain that cookie belongs to, if no domain set, it's for the domain that response is coming from. The path is actually where the cookie can be forwarded to, that path and below. Secure, that cookie will only be sent over HTTPS and HTTP only. This is why, no, so you may think like, okay, if this is HTTP only, the XML HTTP request won't send that. Not necessarily true. This means that JavaScript can't interact with that cookie. So things like cross-site scripting can't pull that cookie. The cookie will still be sent with XML HTTP requests. I think there's also one that says subdomains with domains with subdomains. I can't remember. I'm sure there was one. Anyway, yeah, I'm just trying to see if there was subdomains. Anyway, so the same site is, as I said, a relatively new flag, and there's three options for it. There's lax, strict, and none. Now, lax is basically send it. Sorry. Lax, cookies are not sent on normal cross-site requests. So they, in our example, and we can try the different options out, they're only sent when the user is navigating to a site. So I actually have to click on like a link or something. So it's a user intention to trigger that request. Strict, those cookies will only be sent in first party context and not be sent along with requests initiated by third party sites. So yeah, that's basically removing the ability of those cookies to be sent by a third party. So when in our site, it won't be able to be sent at all. And then none is effectively like removing it. So the cookies will be sent. So it's like how we have it now. So let's try this out. I think I don't even have to change it there. So I'm just trying to think. Let's get our payload in. Let's get the create one because we want to create a user and actually see it being created. So we'll put this back in. There we go. And hopefully see. I've always had mixed luck with these local storages. So we actually have to come to here because it's on this site. And we'll change same site. Can I not change that? Okay. Grr. No. I'm going to have to delete this. So I'm going to delete the cache. I'm going to have to intercept and then basically append it. So intercept. I know I should have actually filtered this. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let that go and see if it set the cookie. I don't think it even sets a cookie yet. It does. Okay. Let's delete this. And intercept. Okay. It is. So we're going to intercept the response. So now what we can do is same sats equals lax. Okay. Forward that on. And if it's all right, it should be there. There we go. Set lax. So now if you log in as Victor, view all the users there. So this payload, yeah, worked before. And if we now refresh the page, it should technically not work. So that cookie shouldn't be sent. So let's go view our actual request. Where's the request? Well, there we go. And there we go. What? That's weird. Just make sure. Yeah. Whoa, what's going on? Yeah, that got created. I don't know why that shouldn't have worked. Maybe there's something weird going on with my browser. But yeah, so the way it works is that shouldn't have worked. But let's not dwell on that. Let's try strict. Okay, strict should definitely work. I'm just curious why that worked that way. Because we didn't actually do a navigation there. So anyway, so we'll come back here. We'll do an intercept. Clear out cache. And come back to the intercept and action. I just want to make sure I actually set it correctly. Strict. Yeah. For that. And that's now strict. Okay. So if you log in with Victor, let's use this. There we go. And we refresh this. Shouldn't work. Yeah. There we go. That's what I was expecting. I still don't know why lax worked. But anyway. So if we come have a look with this, wait, what? Maybe it's something weird's going on with my burp because it's actually not been sent. So if you have a look here, here's a request, and you can see the cookie's not actually been sent. And the server. So when a cookie's not sent and the server actually has session storage, it will then immediately with that response typically send a set cookie. Now, I don't know why this is showing a cookie here. Ah, I know why. I think let's just clear this. Just make 100% sure. I think I know why. And I think that's why the lax also worked. I think. Could be wrong. Let's have a look. Yeah. So what I think is happening here is Burp Suite is using what's called the cookie jar. Actually, the sessions. Yeah. So Burp has this thing called a cookie jar and keeps all the sessions in it. So what it is actually Burp sending the cookie, not the browser, which is why that lax the cookie got sent. Although, yeah, the cookie got sent as well. I have no idea what. Oh, because I didn't kill the cache. But this cookie here is actually not valid. It's not authenticated. So if we actually refresh the page, which is why I noticed this weird thing when I try to log in. Okay, makes sense. So what we should actually do is turn that off. This is sometimes the little gotchas of Burp that does things behind the scenes that you don't actually realize. So if we clear that now and we log in, so we're now relying entirely on the cache of the browser. Let's just get rid of those. And I forgot to. Sorry, I forgot to actually set the flag on it. So if we now do a intercept, and damn it, I'm getting to my lazy, no functioning brain time. Okay. For that, we should get that. Let's do same site equals strict. We forward that on. We log in as Victor. So there we go, strict. And we refresh this. When we come to the proxy, we should now see post, and that's still been sent. Maybe it's oh, I didn't take this out. Sorry about that. That's why it's all messing it up. Live demos, just don't do it. Okay, so forward this now. Now it should work. Like fourth time, I think. Okay, so now if we come here and we refresh this, we should see that. And come in. I don't know what's doing a user error.php. Let's actually see what's happened in the history. I have no idea why it's doing a user error. What is it? Where is it doing that? I'll have to have a look. I don't know why it's doing this. It's making some other call somewhere. Maybe it's behind the scenes after I've logged in. There's some weird thing, but yeah, the general premise is once that the cookie's set, it shouldn't actually change. It shouldn't actually send this cookie, but this cookie's been set somewhere else behind the scenes. So you can see it's now gone away. I don't know why. What's actually doing that? I don't know why it's actually calling that user error first. This one, yeah. And this is the other thing that you'll sometimes find when you're doing Csrf exploits. Obviously, do it for good reasons. Is sometimes you get this weird behavior, and you need to go figure out why there's like these additional requests, and these other additional requests can now screw up your entire Csrf. So in this case, I think there's another set. That's maybe why it's there. But in this case, like if this cookie wasn't sent, then you get a new cookie and like effectively wipe out the other cookie. Let's just see if we can find the culprits. Okay. It's actually doing... Okay, so the site is actually doing one thing correctly. This is actually what you should be doing. When you're logged in, and once you successfully authenticated, you should be setting a new cookie. That's why, because I'm not setting it. All right, one more time. Apologies about this. I was just assuming that it wasn't doing that, but it actually is, which is good. So we should actually even do that. We'll need to just clear the cache. So if we log in as Victor, and we now intercept this. And we'll follow up the response to this. And we'll set same site equals strict. Okay, so now we're in, yeah. And if we now refresh this, we should get should just get the one. Oh, okay. I still don't know why it's calling this user error. But anyway, we can see what that strict has done. It's now removed that cookie from the request. No, it actually hasn't. I don't know. That's what it should have done. I have no idea what's going on. Why is it sending that? It's, yeah, that cookie's been set somewhere else as well. I don't know where or why. Maybe it's the I don't know. Maybe there's some weird thing. I'm a bit dumbfounded. So that there. Actually, where is that being set? We should be able to find it. So I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole. Use it now. This side is weird because it's sending it all over the place. Like, why is it user del? Why is it calling delete? Oh wait, maybe I didn't refresh this page. Kidding me? Did I not refresh this page? Still got that cached. All right, let's try this one more time. Sorry about that. That explains a lot. No. Jeez. I didn't save the page. Muppet. Oh, Jesus. Why? Why? Oh, it's just not caching it. Okay, there we go. So now it should work. Let's try one more time. Oh, goodness me. Okay. So if we log in and we intercept, I'm just going to clear all of this. Wow, I can't believe that. Silly me. All right, so we're going to log in. And now we are going to intercept response to this. Wait, what? I did not clear the cookie. This again. I don't know what's going on. It's going to kill the cache again, just to be sure. Let's intercept. All right, so no cookie being sent. Forward that. Now we'll set the same site equals strict. And forward that. Just get rid of that. All right. So now, if we call this, should just do one request and not send the cookie. Finally, there we go. That's what I was hoping for. Oh God. And just to check, we'll go into here and check the posts. And no cookie sent. So that's what we're expecting. And then just to show you lax as well, because the lax was doing that weird stuff because of what I did. I'm just being super cautious now and just clearing the cache all the time. Let's clear that. And intercept. probably a easier way of doing this. I really got to up my game on burp. Same size equals lax. Okay, so and if we refresh this page, should do that one request, and again shouldn't send that token cookie. Now, if I had a link, actually let's do a link because it is going to be browsing, like, and I'll actually show you what the lax does. So if we actually, the cookie's been overwritten by this here. So that's actually points out like you could kind of do a denial service, I guess, maybe. I don't know. So let's do lax again. I really wish I should have just seen if we could modify the server code. Right, so we're going to follow the interceptions to this, follow it. I'm going to do lax again, same site equals lax. All right, and we're going to not drop that, forward it. Okay. So that's now set to lax. Now, what else we're going to do is we're actually going to delete a user using that get request. So users, view all users. Let's delete 51. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to come in here and we're just going to actually not do that. We don't want to do that. And we're going to include a Csrf equals copy this link. We'll call it delete me. And if we refresh this, there should be a link here called delete me. There we go. We haven't gone to anything there, so if we clear this, we'll make it easier to see. And let's also clear the logs in burp so we can see it easily. So if we click on this, my theory is right. It should actually send the cookie. There we go. So there's that cookie. And that's because I've actually navigated to the other sites. So with lax, things like, I don't know what else you would do. Maybe a redirect, I think might work. I don't know. I don't even know what it. Could always try at some point. But definitely a link that the user physically clicks on would take you to that site and send that cookie. So that's how lax works. And then none is as if we didn't even set same site. And you can actually see that when we clear the cache and come back to this, and you can see that it's set to none. That's the kind of default. So that is Cross-Site Request Forgery. I'm just aware of the time, so we won't go over the other sites. There's a few other things that I can show quickly as well. One of the best Cross-Site Request Forgery kind of things I ever came across was a router. So this is where I'm going with why Cross-Site Request Forgery is kind of so important. Wow, 7 years ago. Jesus, I feel old. So the first one we found was a last line, which is email security tool. And if you actually look at the advisory, it's all available. You can search SecureWorks advisories and last line. This vulnerability actually allowed, I'm trying to remember what it was. Yeah, unauthenticated attacker could conduct Csrf attacks I'm actually trying to remember what the vulnerabilities was. So, and yeah, we included the screenshots. I think it was just updating user permissions or something like that. I can't remember. Some of the things that we did, we were able to like create new users or upgrade access of a user. So this is showing like these were in security products. I think Carbon Black was another one. My favorite one that I did was this one. This was TP-Link, which is a router, and using Csrf, I was able to leverage the backup functionality. So you could actually import a file that contained all the backup configuration, and if you could do that, you can basically upload your own file that you could then change the router configuration, and that's exactly what I did. Because these routers are standard, you can buy off the shelf. What you could do is just use the router itself to generate the file that you want. The only caveat is if someone did do changes in terms of things like Wi-Fi codes and that kind of stuff, then would have maybe become a bit obvious. But premise is still there. You could change the actual configuration of the router. I'm pretty sure if I spent enough time, I could have maybe even got it to pull down the config and then put it somewhere, and then you could modify it. But anyway, the vulnerability here, the real difficulty that I had was trying to get that file. So what it uses ability to host that file somewhere, and then use XML HTTP request to basically pull that file down and then stick it in as a binary. Now, I was trying to do this last night with the images, and I don't know if this is even going to work anymore this year because this isn't a standard function and it's no longer in the likes of Firefox. But at the time it did work. So you can see there's all the code there. So this here was the management console. So I think 00 was no remote access. You visit the site with this nice cute dog, and it did the upload. It then did a reboot of the router, which was just a simple call there, and away you go. And it's only 255, 255, 255, which means wide open to the internet. One example of where Csrf can take you. But as I said, it's kind of going away with things like same sites. I think the default on browsers like Chrome and that now are becoming lax. So as we saw when I eventually got it working, unless the user actually clicks on and navigates towards that site, they probably not going to be able to do it. But maybe there's things like clickjacking and that you could attacker could potentially leverage to get around that. There is one other big caveat before I forget to mention this. So remember how sessions are basically the cornerstone. So session cookies are pretty much the cornerstone of this. Modern websites are now starting to move towards things like single page web apps. And as part of that, a lot of the calls are now like API-based calls. And with that, cookies can still be used and are still used in some cases. But a far more common approach to that is using a token. And the token is sent in a header, not as a cookie, and JavaScript is then used to send that token with requests. Now, that has a benefit, like that kills cross-site scripting dead in the water. But, well, potentially dead. The reason why I say potentially dead, if you misconfigure calls, you could potentially still exploit that. But like standard out of the box, no calls kind of enabled. So talking about calls with wildcards, dead in the water. Like Csrf is not going to be possible. The problem though becomes you kind of got these two things on the opposite ends with that approach. So any sort of cross-site scripting vulnerability within there now becomes a significant risk because that XSS can steal that token. Whereas cookies, you have the HTTP only flag, so you can kill that in the water and dead. So you kind of got these two conflicting things where on the one hand, you can kind of kill Csrf dead, but you face bar challenges if you've got cross-site scripting. And then the other, that's if you're using tokens. And on the other hand, if you're using cookies, you've kind of got this, well, you can kill XSS type attacks, the impact of them rather, on session cookies dead in the water, but then you got the potential of Csrf. Yeah, and Csrf, I haven't seen too many vulnerabilities lately. It's always something that I think's been never looked at too much and taken seriously. Certainly when I was looking at a lot of those tools, it was something that was used, that we found quite often with quite significant impact. The difficulty being you need to know how to exploit it. So you need to know the ins and outs of the request to send. But if it's a product you can sign up to or buy or open source, that's pretty trivial to get around. The more difficult bit is actually socially engineering users to click on links in that while they have an active session. Oh, that was the other cool thing about this vulnerability. Because this actually used basic authentication. Remember I mentioned that right at the beginning. And because people typically don't change their router details, I actually could force this to pre-authenticate using basic authentication. So I didn't even have to rely on the user having an active session. And this is a way that you can do basic authentication using a link. So username : password @ and then the IP address or host. So in this case, I relied on the fact that people probably didn't change their router password, so it would kind of force authenticate them. Yeah. So, and one final thing, totally unrelated. Sorry, there's just one question from Chills. What type of attack be EDR alerted to on something, say like Carbon Black, if it had an endpoint on it? I don't know if it could actually really alert. So like EDR is the endpoint detection, so it kind of detects behaviors and that. And if you actually think about it, like the way Csrf is working is the only way you're going to be able to tell is kind of drilling down into where that request has been called from, like what tab and what tab does that site belong to and that. So I don't know enough about EDRs and like the latest and greatest. Like I think the latest is XDDR, extended DR and that, whether they have that ability. So, and this is the whole point about Csrf. You can't, like outside of the browser, you can't distinguish if that's a legitimate request or not, because the request being made looks legitimate. It's got the cookie, it's got the payload. Maybe what you could actually detect is the agent. So if we have a look at, is it going to be, no, so we'll have to do this again. So let's get rid of that. I have to put a payload in again. The user agents, is that not working? Why is it not copying? The user agent will be like X. I forgot what it will be. Let's just test it out. I can show you. I forgot what it. The domain name I called it. Sorry, 1 second. So did I do the post? So you can check the user agent. No, that's interesting. Sometimes the user agent's actually set differently. Actually, no. Is it? There's another header that gets set sometimes, but it actually doesn't look like it's been set. Like requested with, I can't remember. It's been a while, but I know sometimes there's another header that you could potentially use to indicate that it's been what do you call requested via XML HTTP request. Another way is just use like JSON in that, and this is actually a good point because say using cookies and APIs, often you won't actually call the API with something like this. You would call it with a JSON or something else like that. And we can actually do this now. If I change this to application JSON, you should actually see the pre-flight happen. Please work. There we go. Yay, something worked out of the box. So there's the pre-flight check there. That's the options. And as you can see, like, it's gone, done. What can I do from there? And I've not found a way around this. Maybe there's, maybe others have found a way around this. But I've certainly not found a way to get around the pre-flights. So yeah, if you set things like XML or JSON content types, then you kind of also prevent potentially some cross-site request Csrf vulnerabilities. One other cool thing, side note, is besides the cool hack the box theme, yeah. So this Visual Studio Code, what I'm actually doing is using this plugin called it's from Microsoft, the remote plugin. It's over, where is it? One of these ones, yeah. This one, yeah. I actually installed. It's there, remote SSH editing, not configuration files. There, remote SSH. And this here is actually a directory structure on another server that I have running the web server from. So you can actually edit code on a totally different server using SSH and that. It's pretty cool. Rather than having to do things like OneSCP, like edit it locally and copy it across, or do things like setting up Vim or Nano and trying to do it that way. So I thought I'd point that out. I mean, you've seen it, it works really well. So pretty cool feature. No, it's actually not the subsystem one, Nikos. This is like actually SSHing. So subsystem works with WSL, and that's also cool. Works pretty much the same way as this. So you basically like type code in your WSL instance, and it will pop open your Visual Studio Code on your main Windows box with that directory. This is actually if you're running like Ubuntu. So this is actually a Ubuntu VM on an ESXi instance, and it actually uses SSH to do pretty much the same thing. Yeah, I was thinking if I could try to do the WSL one as well. I was like, can it install code there? Will it work the same? Like, no. And then I read Microsoft's site last night, and this is the tool they have, and it works like the same and works really well. So have a look. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that's the end of that. It's slightly better than last time, but yeah, thanks for everyone for coming and watching, and hopefully it was useful. Apologies about the confusion around the same site stuff. Yeah, got my head a bit muddled there and some other issues, but yeah, hopefully this was helpful, and looking forward to seeing you all in the next one. Have a good one, all. Bye.
Swear I won't forget this, why do I regret this? In my mind reckless, thoughts are feeling endless. Sitting up I'm breathless, anxiety's infectious. I feel so defenseless, betrayed and embarrassed. I hate being open, I hate being broken. I feel like an ocean filled up with emotion. Anger ain't a potion, rub it on like lotion. I can feel it soaking, reopen, the scars have awoken. I can't move on till I let go. I feel so lost, never at home. Need to be strong, every breath hold. Cause I can't move on till I let go. I can't move on till I let go. I feel so lost, never at home. Need to be strong, every breath hold. Cause I can't move on till I let go.